We're talking about typical keys, and you'll see some up here. They're ageless. I mean, the Morse code keys from 1880 to the 1940s had no changes. They just went on forever and ever. There were a zillion manufacturers. Let's face it, Morse code stations were the method of communications. There were tens of thousands more in daily use. So there were lots and lots of telegraph equipment around. They just didn't change.
Do we give Samuel
keys, and you'll see some up here, they're ageless. I mean, the Morse code keys from 1880 to the 1940s had no changes. They just went on forever and ever. There were a zillion manufacturers. Let's face it, Morse code stations were the method of communications. There were tens of thousands more in daily use. So there were lots and lots of telegraph equipment around. They just didn't change. They took a real pounding. They had to be typically screwed down to the bench. You'll see some that had very long screws mounted to underneath the key with wing nuts on them. And you could put that down on your operating table, tighten the wing nuts, and start pounding away, which is a very acceptable term, by the way.
Right.
Pounding brass was what you did. That was your profession. As a person in the industry, you pounded brass. This is an interesting key. Notice there's no wires hooked to it anywhere. It's a practice key. You didn't know what it was when we first saw it, but we realized it was just a practice key. Side swiper is another form of key that people used. Kind of changed the rhythm a little bit, changed how you manipulate the key. But we were finding out that people kind of got tired. Seeing the key all day long, you could start to get a problem sending code. So they came up with different methods to change how the key felt. It was just a side swiper. They weren't very popular. There's several in the museum. I have one in my collection, and they're interesting to use, but nothing really special. This is an unusual key. It was used on the undersea cable starting in 1865 or so. Thousands and thousands of miles of undersea cable. The inductance and capacitance of cable was so high, it was really hard to get current to flow through it. Then you send some current at one end, and at the other end, you just sort of wait. Well, I think there's some current coming through. It was really slow. So with the undersea cable, they keyed plus and minus voltages. So you send plus for the dots and minus for the DITs, or for the dashes, and you could detect that very easily. Where you couldn't, it didn't sound like code at all. Of course, the rest of the world was doing the same thing. Very much on a parallel endeavor. We'd make improvements. Europeans, the rest of the world, would make improvements. We do this, the rest of the world will do that. So this is very typical of a European key. They went a little different direction. They had a longer lever, and they had this wonderful, wonderful knob up here, vertical knob, and that's this key right here. Boy, that's my favorite key. I always have a straight key hooked up to my station, no matter what. I've got paddles, computers, and everything, but there's always a straight key hooked up in case, and this is the one. This Swedish long lever military key. Beautiful, beautiful action. So in 1903, Marconi demonstrated his first transatlantic two-way. We all know about his 1901 letter S. In 1903, he sent two-way wireless telegraphy using spark. So we started a whole new era of spark keys. When you keyed a 25 kilowatt spark transmitter, you keyed 25 kilowatts through the key. So the keys had to be rather serious. This is a huge spark key made by the Massey wireless telegraph system. And you better hang on to that wood end. And it looks hard to use, and you're holding it like this. And of course, that sparks are flying. So, yeah, they were massive keys. Here's another spark key. This one, the contact sat in a bath of oil to try to cool them off. So the characteristic of spark keys is they were big and massive. So here's a sparker, we call them sparkers, that was sat in oil. This is a Marconi key called the guillotine key because this lever lifted way up to take you in and out of the circuit. And if you carelessly let your wrist lay here and that should accidentally come down, they got hurt. So called the guillotine key. There's another Marconi wireless key that would be used aboard ship. So, you know, they all have their different characteristics. Here's another long lever key with heavy contacts on the marble. This is a very common key used by radio amateurs. Number one, because it was cheap. Radio amateurs love cheap right from the day one. So this is a Boston key. This is a very interesting spark key. It's a sequencing key. Here's the contacts, the key, the transmitter. Another set of contacts here with an adjustment. Another set of contacts here with its own adjustment. And as you press the key down, you can close one set of contacts first, then another set of contacts, then finally key the transmitter. And now in 1923, the radio amateurs started transmitting transatlantic signals using not spark, but CW.